Okay, in just a few seconds here, we're going to see a video that talks about Scat 393 and 408 stroker cranks. We're going to look at the professional products, Harmonic dampener, the 8306, 28 ounce. And what we're going to focus on is the crankshaft woodruff keys. There's three required. And getting correct key engagement to the crank sprocket and the balancer itself. So let's start the fun.
What I want to talk about here is getting the keys in there in a way that the lower crank sprocket engages the key fully. Now, you guys have probably seen videos. I've seen some Power Nation board build-up videos where I almost cringe at people installing these things. I'm going to push this back, don't worry. And there is almost no engagement on the lower crank sprocket to the crankshaft keyway. What the heck is turning the engine over? It's the keyway. And I think people often overlook this, so I've set this key in here carefully, and I'll have a voiceover PowerPoint. It shows I got that in there. And I'll have part numbers. So I heated up the snout, froze the key overnight, no big secret. And then tapped the key in, and then used a Dremel and a sanding drum to get the height just right here. So what's the definition of the height just right? So let's push this back and see. Now look at that engagement. That's full engagement. Is it interference fit? No. See that? Feels right on. But that's fully engaged, and that's how it should be. So the rest of the video will talk about the professional products balancer and these keys. And we'll talk about, I'll show the actual instructions for the keyway height, how to alter the keyway height to be acceptable, what the part number of these keys are, and I'll have some still shots and a voiceover PowerPoint of how I got it in. Okay, this portion of the video discusses some of the keyways for this Scat 393 stroker crankshaft. So you can see the Comp Cam's finishing kit. The finishing kit is cool because it comes with things like these timing chain dowels. It even comes with cylinder head dowels, which most people don't realize. It also comes with keyways. Now, Comp Cams is going to give the factory Ford common keys, which you can see here. Is that going to fit? No. As I mentioned earlier, Scat uses 3 keys. Is that going to fit? No, that's not going to fit either. So the recommended key by Scat is this key. There'll be part numbers in the voiceover, don't worry. So just qualitatively, look at the penetration of this key here. We were talking in the earlier video about this crank sprocket's interface depth with the key. So a lot of people might think, boy, you're really proud of yourself that you got that nice and snug in there, but maybe you didn't get the key far enough in there. No, it's a qualitative. I actually measured this and I wrote it down somewhere and lost it, but it's so good, meaning it's so sufficient, I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about putting in the video. That's a lot of depth on these keys. The other portion of the video will talk about how to get the correct height of these keys.
Okay, you guys saw the video of me fooling around with the keys and the crank sprocket, talking about some various things. So let's go through the details, and I'll give you some advice on how I got these keys in and some of the cautions, and how this is really a good part, this professional products, and I would highly recommend it. So some of the details are, this is a nice made in USA part. As of late 2023, this thing's just over $100, so it's extremely economical. It's got timing marks for both small block Ford timing pointer positions, which makes it really convenient. It comes with this pulley pilot spacer. It's a separate part number if you lose or break it. Most people do need this. Here's some of the highlights. It's both 3 and 4 bolt pattern. I mentioned the timing marks. The outside diameter is the same as the stock 5 liter and 5.8. And what's the big deal there? That means your stock timing pointer will align. I'm going to talk about timing verification later. It's got a removable weight, which means that you can take it off if you want to use this for internal balance. Okay, quick detail here. Picture has white markings. Here's the balancer on my engine. Doesn't have white markings. I wish it did. They're light gray. I think they're laser etched. I mentioned the timing pointer. Here I am with this Summit Racing degree wheel. What I'm doing is I'm verifying top dead center. Now notice how I use the word verify. There's 1,000 YouTube videos on determining top dead center, and I think those videos often suggest that modified engines will not indicate top dead center in the correct location. And that's really not true. You'd have to do a lot to alter that. Zero decking the engine, using the Scat crank and rods, that's not going to do anything to a TDC. So instead of determining top dead center and then buying the adjustable pointer, you can see what I did with this 5/8 18 all threaded rod. You verify top dead center. And then once you've got it per the procedure, this video doesn't cover that, then you just look down and say, how accurate is my timing pointer? So that's one of the benefits of the stock diameter. Okay, so this is one of the reasons I put this video together. The blogosphere is full. I mean, it took 5 minutes to collect up these pictures. The blogosphere is full of people saying, do I have correct keyway engagement? And I'm not really making fun of those people. The people that posted these pictures are genuinely, they want some advice on it. So good for them for asking. So let's talk about the physics here. There are people that'll say now that the keyway is just to align the crank sprocket for crankshaft and camshaft timing. That is not correct. The crank keyway is what's reacting the load into the crank sprocket, and that's what's allowing the engine to reciprocate, and that's the deal. So anyone else who says that's not going on, I don't know what you're talking about. Now on a small block Ford, and we will see pictures of my engine later, yes, the balancer does clamp up at full torque to the crank sprocket. And that helps keep the crank sprocket in place, but it's not intended to maintain crank sprocket to crankshaft alignment. That's not what it's doing, nor is it reacting any loads from the engine. It's along for the ride. The small block Ford balancer key, that interface allows for the correct timing pointer indication. Now, some of you know something about the LS engines. Now, on the LS engine, only the key is the crank sprocket, so not the balancer. So why do I bring that up? Well, obviously, then, the key sprocket is the only mechanical interface reacting loads to reciprocate the engines. I just use the LS as an example. So in this presentation, we're going to show how to avoid these problems. Okay, some of you, this may all be you care about is, would you just shut up and tell me what keys to use? That all the part numbers are in the title and description of the video. Just click on this, go right there. Here are the correct keys to use for the Scat 393 and 408 crankshafts. These are Chevy keys, just for economies of scale. They're commonly available. Some of you may be rolling your eyes and saying, I don't want 25 keys. Well, who cares? You might screw up a key, so it's kind of good to have more. I put the dimensions in here. Since I have, 20 of these things left over, I measured several of them. I did notice the length here is pretty variable, so that'll affect the height in the key slot. But we're going to talk about trimming these keys down so they fit. Okay, so how do you get the keys in? No magic here. What I did is I froze these babies overnight. And I heated up the crank snout with a heat gun for about 20 minutes. You probably don't need to do that, but I just did it. I will say right away, these keyways 2 and 3 for the damper, don't install them at this time. We'll just focus on the crankshaft sprocket keyway now. So get that baby tapped in and leave the other keys out for now. Then we'll move on here. Okay, that's proper keyway engagement. That's what you want. It's not that hard to do. I didn't have to Dremel this down. You could, meaning alter the keyway height. You could if you had to. If you tap this in all the way and it wouldn't go down any further, and you can't get your crank sprocket on, don't take it out, the key out, and then try to put a shorter one in. We're going to discuss how I trim those down. It's really easy. All I had to do on mine is I tapped it in there until the Ford Motorsport crank sprocket fit on like a glove. Real easy. Okay, this is a big deal. This is also hyperlinked in the title and introduction. It'll take you directly to the professional products instructions. And I think a lot of people might kind of miss this or skim over it. There's a max keyway height here. And it's funny, I was on the phone with the professional products guy, not a sales guy. It was one of their engineers, one of their technical guys. I was talking about something else, and we were talking about this. And he told me, yeah, a lot of people just ignore this and they just torque the balancer on where the keyways are, the keys are too tall. He goes, one of two things happens. Either the balancer won't fully contact the crank sprocket. We're going to show a picture of that, or it can actually damage the balancer. So it's important to measure this max key height, and we're going to talk about how to alter that. So I just mentioned here, this is a point of somewhat common confusion. I admit that a long time ago in high school, maybe a little after, I was a little confused on what's going on here. When you fully torque up the balancer doesn't stop moving because it's got a taper fit. You put a certain amount of torque on it, it just kind of stops. That's not what's stopping it. It actually makes physical contact with the crank sprocket. You can see the chamfer there kind of makes it look like it's not touching. I trust me, it's touching, and it's supposed to do that. So the balancer stops moving when you're torquing it, when it makes contact, and that's by design. Okay, so let's talk about the key height. Okay, this is how I did it, and it's shockingly easy. So I mentioned early on here, you got 3 keys. Do this one first, do these 2 later. So for this key, I said, well, I'm just going to hit them with the stones. Yeah, it worked, but it took like 15 minutes with the stones, and it just wasn't very effective, and it leaves kind of this ugly finish. So what I did is I tried just common Dremel with these 120 grit sanding drum. Heck, I only used one drum, and in 2 minutes I went from 1.482 to 1.455, and with a really smooth finish. So the takeaway for you guys that are thinking of doing this, check progress every 30 seconds or so, because this stuff takes off a lot of material, but it's still really smooth. This is the way to do it. Okay, let's move on. Okay, just conclusion discussion. If you're thinking about buying that professional products 8006 balancer, do it with confidence. It's a great parts, made in USA. The ATI balancer is 4 times more money. Now I know there's someone out there going, well, ATI's balancer is better and has more capability. Okay, good. If you want it, get it. Is the ATI a good part? Of course it's a good part. I think it's become the go-to balancer for everybody, and it probably does a lot of things that people don't need for street strip cars, but it is extremely expensive. Okay, get the crankshaft woodruff key in there with full sprocket engagement. Measure and trim down your keys so you don't exceed the height. Verify your balancer makes contact with the crank sprocket at full torque. And about my earlier comments of adjustable timing pointer, take some time and verify your factory timing pointer accuracy before you do that. I think you're going to find that it is accurate, defined as plus or minus half a degree. So going out and getting that adjustable timing pointer and not even checking your factory one, I wouldn't do that lightly. And, as usual, don't drive like my brother. Okay, take care, fellas. See you.